The sound of horse hooves tore through the silent night of Black Arroyo, bringing with it a death sentence to the door of the desolate wooden house. In the dusty underground cellar, Leah desperately covered the mouth of her trembling 6-year-old daughter, her sweaty hands gripping her late husband's old pistol. Above, the flimsy wooden ceiling echoed with the pounding of leather boots and a cold voice. Find the note Caleb left behind and deal with that widow who controls the water source. They hadn't come to plunder. They had come to seize the land, the livelihood, and forever bury the truth about her husband's death 2 droughts ago. The wooden door creaked, beginning to crumble under the deafening blows. Leah pulled the hammer, closing her eyes, preparing to sacrifice her life to protect her only child. But just as the door was about to burst open, a primal battle cry ripped through the night from the dark stone alley. The darkness outside went berserk. Gunfire erupted. Horses neighed shrilly. A man screamed wildly, then fell into an eerie silence. Leah held her breath. The predators had fallen. But the creature that had just emerged from the shadows might be even more terrifying. There was no violent kick, only 3 gentle taps on the wood, and a deep, hoarse male voice said, "Don't shoot. If I wanted to harm you, I wouldn't have waited for them to break down the door." Leah pushed open the crumbling wooden door. Her gun pointed directly at the tall, imposing figure standing in the dim moonlight. Before her was a Mescalero Apache man. His long black hair was tied low, falling to his shoulders, and a fresh blood stain seeped through his torn shirt at his side. But his eyes were chillingly cold and calm. Outside, a man lay motionless in a puddle of mud. The other 2 had fled in panic into the night. "They've been lurking around this rocky gorge for days," he said, his deep voice breaking the silence. "I was just waiting to see what they would do." Leah's fingers tightened around the gun barrel, her vigilance instantly heightened. If he had been watching those men for so long, it meant he had also been secretly observing her and her child. As if reading her hidden fear, the man gently shook his head. "I didn't come for you. I came for Black Arroyo Spring. That underground spring absolutely cannot fall into Victor Pike's hands." His cold bluntness made Leah freeze, but it was Beth's trembling, whispering voice clinging to her mother's skirt that broke the standoff. "Mom, is he dead?" Leah's gaze swept over the stranger's constantly bleeding wound. A harsh choice flashed through her mind. Push this dangerous man out, or lose the only shield that had just protected her family. She took a deep breath, gently lowered her gun, and reluctantly stepped aside to let him limp through the doorway. Under the flickering oil lamp, as Leah pressed a clean cloth tightly against the wound on her side, the man's gaze suddenly fell on Caleb's pocket watch on the wooden shelf. "Your husband," he said abruptly, his eyes fixed on Leah's wide-open eyes. "He died near the bottom of the Black Stone Gorge. Not collapsed beside the dry well, as the sheriff wrote." The weary dawn crept across the black cliffs of Black Arroyo, revealing the harsh reality of Ford Arroyo Ranch. Broken sections of fence, the empty well, and patches of beans scorched by the harsh sun. In the corner of the yard, little Beth was innocently picking up the silver-veined black stones from the bottom of the gorge, naively clinging to the only possession this barren land could offer. Leah stood silently by the windowsill, her eyes heavy with the memory of Caleb, the man who had gambled his life on the fact that the underground water still flowed beneath the bedrock. Caleb had died 2 droughts ago, taking the secret to his grave in a case the town hastily closed with 4 cold words: a dispute over water rights. Since that tragic day, the rancher, Victor Pike, had relentlessly pursued her, using cheap persuasion to pressure the widow into giving up the ranch. Even Sheriff Jonas Bell shook his head, advising her to give up, for a single woman could not possibly hold on to the land and her child in a valley dying of thirst. Slow footsteps echoed. Sani stepped out onto the porch, his gaze sweeping over the ditches Leah had desperately dug, then settling on the stunted plants. "You're digging ditches and sowing seeds the eastern way," he said calmly, without a hint of pity. "This land isn't dead, it's just hiding the water to survive." Leah tightened her grip on the rag, a wave of unease rising within her. She hated the way this stranger spoke of her farm, as if he were the one who understood every breath of the land, not her. But before she could utter a word of protest, Sani slowly raised his hand, pointing directly at the towering, pitch-black cliff to the north. "If your husband had dug 10 more steps, he would have found water." Sani's eyes darkened like the bottom of a ravine. "It's just, someone didn't want him to dig that far." The stranger's body lay wrapped in a filthy tarp, tossed haphazardly behind the dilapidated horse-drawn cart. Sani paused at the edge of the yard, his voice low and warning. "A white widow entering town with a mescalero Apache. She'll only be inviting further trouble for herself." But Leah didn't flinch. She swung the reins, responding decisively. "If you disappear now, Victor Pike will make you the perfect murderer." The decaying town greeted them with murderous stares and vicious whispers that pierced the parched air of a thirsty community. Chief Jonas Bell took the testimony with a weary expression, his pen faltering on the page, until the rancher, Victor Pike, parted the crowd and stepped forward. "Police Chief Jonas Bell, our widow is being manipulated by this wild Native American," Pike said slyly, a cruel smirk on his face as he easily referred to his recently deceased henchman as an unknown vagabond. Amidst the noisy, hostile crowd, Sani stood motionless like a desert rock. But his gaze was fixed on Pike's horse's hooves. There, a thick black mud clung, the only water-soaked mud found deep beneath the Black Arroyo gorge. Leah caught his sharp gaze. She understood instantly. Pike's lie had exposed his insatiable thirst for water. As Leah turned to leave the sheriff's office, Victor Pike leaned in, his breath a menacing whisper in her ear. "A woman holding onto land is hard enough. A woman trying to protect an Apache will hold on to nothing." Returning from town seething with resentment, Leah rushed into the shallow gorge, flipping through Caleb's worn old notebook in desperate search of a miracle. Sani didn't take the pickaxe from her. He silently followed, pointing to the unusually green cluster of mesquite trees and the thin streak of salt seeping from the scorched rocks. They clashed fiercely on the cracked earth. Leah stubbornly measured according to the precise numbers and angular lines of her late husband's drawings, while Sani trusted only the shadows cast by the mountain peaks and the scattered flight paths of the falcons in the late afternoon. "The earth never lies," Sani snarled, his shovel plunging into the hard gravel. Both the dry calculations of the white people and the survival instincts of the mescalero people ultimately converged on a single point. They dug incessantly. Their pickaxes tore through the merciless clay until a trail of wet mud appeared. Then, cool, clear water slowly seeped up, gently filling the bottom of the hole. Little Beth cried out with joy, scooping up precious drops of water and splashing them on her dirt-stained face. But amidst her child's innocent laughter, Leah's eyes darkened. Water was real. The miracle was real. This also means that Caleb's death was entirely a cruel murder plot. That night, stepping out onto the cliffside under the cold moonlight, a chill ran down Leah's spine. Right at the boundary of the newly dug water source, a brand new wooden stake engraved with Victor Pike's seal, had been driven into the ground by someone like a knife held to a throat. A suffocating atmosphere enveloped the wooden house after the discovery of the threatening stake. A sharp metallic clang shattered the silence. Beth had accidentally dropped Caleb's pocket watch onto the wooden floor. The old brass caseback sprang open with the impact. From the narrow gap inside, a folded, yellowed piece of paper quietly fell out. Leah's hands trembled as she picked up the paper. It was a crude, hand-drawn diagram illustrating the Black Arroyo water source, beneath which was a scrawled, unfinished inscription. Pike knows. If you don't return, Leah's world crumbled. Caleb hadn't succumbed to a meaningless argument. He knew of Pike's ambition to seize the water source and desperately wanted to leave evidence before being silenced forever. Leah's gaze shifted, catching a fleeting flicker of unease on Sani's usually stoic face. His breath hitched. He knew this paper. He knew something. Pressed down by the widow's fiery gaze, the Mescalero man's silent facade finally cracked. The brutal truth of the previous 2 droughts was brought to light. Sani confessed that he had been hiding on the Black Cliff that day, witnessing 3 men pursue Caleb to the bottom of the ravine. He recognized Victor Pike's horse among the assassins. At that time, the army soldiers were searching for me in the mountains, Sani said, his eyes heavy with remorse. If I had fired, I would have been hanged before sunset. To survive, he chose to silently watch a stranger fall. A bitter feeling of betrayal choked Leah. The man who had just saved her and her child's lives was now the witness who had buried her family's justice. "You didn't kill Caleb," Leah whispered, her eyes red but her voice sharp as shattered glass. "But you left me to live 2 years with a lie." Sani's back slumped as he walked toward the dark stone alley. He gathered his belongings, choosing to leave with the ingrained belief that the presence of an Apache would only bring death to the widow and her child. There were no weak tears or pleas to stop him. Leah stood tall on the porch, her voice dry but firm. "If you want to run away, go ahead, but I will take Caleb's papers to town." Alone, Sani's footsteps halted in the courtyard. More than anyone else, he knew Victor Pike's guns lurked in the shadows, and she would be torn to shreds before she even saw the town's signpost. As Sani turned to leave, Leah offered him no easy forgiveness. She said a cold line. "If you step through this door again, you are not to make decisions for me. You can read footprints. I can read the law. From now on, there are no secrets." They formed an equal alliance, proceeding with utmost caution. Under the oil lamp, Leah held her breath as she copied each stroke of Caleb's map onto a new sheet of paper, then meticulously sewed the original into the hem of little Beth's tiny woolen dress. Their affection needed no empty vows. It blossomed through rough, direct actions. Outside the stable, Sani carefully inspected and repaired the worn-out saddle, but deliberately stepped back, allowing Leah to tighten the final strap herself. That evening, Leah silently placed an extra earthenware bowl on the rough wooden table. She didn't call out, letting the presence of the empty bowl speak of unspoken acceptance. The following morning, while the air was still chilly, they prepared to set out to strike a counterattack against the town's rotten legal system. But as they led their horses out of the stable, Sani's gaze suddenly fixed on the soft ground beside the manger. He knelt on one knee, his calloused fingers tracing the outline of a fresh indentation recently filled with earth. "These footprints aren't adults," Sani growled, his icy stare directed toward the bedroom window. Victor Pike's reach extended further than they had imagined. He had secretly planted someone to monitor Beth's every move. They rode into town with a faint hope of a blind justice. But Victor Pike had ruthlessly laid a massive trap. Standing at the sheriff's office was not only Pike, but also a stern-looking U.S. Vice Marshal with a gleaming silver badge on his chest. "That's the Apache who left the reserve without a permit." Pike pointed his finger directly at Sani, weaving a perfect accusation. He coldly linked Sani to the massacre of a caravan near the mountains that had occurred the previous week. Under the suffocating atmosphere of the territory in 1881, a Mescalero Apache appearing outside the control of the authorities automatically became a threat. The marshal's hand gripped the butt of his rifle, ready to shackle Sani and take him away under the pretext of temporary detention for verification. Undeterred by the gun, Leah slammed Caleb's copy of the map down on Sheriff Jonas Bell's desk. But Pike only sneered, insulting the crowd. A jumbled piece of paper presented by a widow willing to harbor an Apache. Is that testimony more credible than the honor of a man who pays taxes in this town? Surrounded by prejudice and hostility, Sani maintained the chilling stillness of a rock. He meticulously pointed out the discrepancies in the direction of the hoofprints and the type of red soil in the carjacking, proving that the real culprit had fled west, not through Black Arroyo at all. His sharp understanding and composure caused the marshal to frown in hesitation, temporarily withdrawing his hand from his holster. Chief Jonas tucked the copy of the diagram into a drawer, his weary eyes fixed on Leah as he delivered a bitter warning. "I'll keep this, but widow, the law needs irrefutable evidence. If the original disappears, Pike will easily brainwash the entire town into believing you're just a crazy person making things up." That warning echoed in Leah's ears as she left the suffocating atmosphere of the office. And then, the blood in her veins suddenly froze. In a dark, secluded corner behind the stables, the town's deputy sheriff was furtively nodding and tucking something into his jacket pocket. Right behind Victor Pike's most loyal lieutenant. The first rain of the season fell on the Black Arroyo Gorge. Not torrential or furious, the rare drops were just enough to wash away the dust, polish the jet-black stones, and awaken the earthy scent of life from the barren soil. Under the gentle drizzle, 3 people quietly revived the farm. Leah strained her eyes reading Caleb's notebook to calculate the slope, while Sani bent over, rolling large rocks and mesquite branches to block the flow, preventing the precious water from eroding the soft soil. Little Beth trotted over, her tiny hands carefully placing a black stone with silver veins at the mouth of the newly opened water channel. "It holds the water!" she exclaimed, her bright smile dispelling the darkness of the gorge. Suddenly, the wet mud caused Leah to slip and fall. Reacting like lightning, Sani reached out and pulled her up. His embrace was firm but restrained, and he was about to release her the moment she regained her balance. But this time, Leah's hand didn't pull away. She proactively tightened her grip on the rough fingers of the Apache warrior, holding them for another long breath, a quiet affirmation requiring no words. Night fell. The rain pattered rhythmically on the wooden roof. By the flickering oil lamp, Leah bent over, mending Sani's tattered shirt. "If I stay any longer, their knives will be at your and your mother's throats," Sani whispered, his eyes fixed on the blazing fire in the hearth, heavy with the torment of someone who always brings misfortune. Leah continued mending, her voice calm but clear. "That knife has been at the edge of this land long before you stepped through this door. There were no tearful declarations of love or vows of eternal devotion. Leah simply took her late husband's old handkerchief and gave it to Sani to tie around the wound. A quiet yet heart-wrenching gesture. She would never erase the past, but she had opened the door for the present to enter. The fleeting warmth of a budding home was abruptly halted when little Beth's innocent voice rang out from the corner of the bed. "Mommy, if we have water, why do you still lock the door?" Leah's hand froze on the iron latch. She peered through the gap in the wooden planks, and a sudden chill ran through her veins. High above the dark cliff, hidden amidst the night rain, a ghastly red flame had just been lit. A ghostly signal of cold, watchful eyes. The next morning, Leah rode back to town, determined to use the law to claim ownership of the water source, but a cold shower shattered her last glimmer of hope. A copy of Caleb's diagram, the only evidence exposing Victor Pike's ambitions, had vanished from the locked drawer of the sheriff's office. The deputy police officer shrugged in denial with a sneer, while Jonas Bell slammed his hand on the table in furious but utterly powerless rage. Without evidence, the law was merely a paper tiger trapped in Pike's money cage. At the same time, Pike's second blade was raised. The American marshal received an urgent tip that Sani was stockpiling weapons and secretly leading Apache troops through Black Arroyo Gorge. It was a treacherous and cruel move to legitimize the hunt, allowing the town's gunmen to kill Sani in the name of enforcing the law. A premonition of disaster struck Leah, and she frantically spurred her horse back to the farm. Upon reaching the yard, her heart stopped when she saw the stable door wide open. One horse was gone, but what froze her blood was the sight of little Beth standing bewildered on the porch, her tiny hands clutching the juniper bear Sani had carved. "A strange man told me to tell you, Mom." The child's clear, innocent voice broke the eerie silence. "That if you want to keep the land, bring the paper to the Black Arroyo Spring at midnight." Pike had laid his cards on the table. He wanted to drag her out of the shelter of the log cabin, using the child's life to force her to hand over the original document, which he unknowingly was sewn hidden in Beth's skirt. Sani stepped forward, his face as cold as stone, offering to enter the dark abyss alone to settle the score. But Leah resolutely shook her head. This time, she would absolutely not hide behind anyone again. As the last crimson rays of the setting sun faded, a sharp thump ripped through the air. A strange arrow, without any Apache markings, embedded itself in the wooden door. The arrow pinned a crumpled piece of paper with a cold, death-like inscription. "Take this paper to the water source, or the child will never see the dawn." The night was thick and dark. The crackling of torches mingled with the frantic clatter of horses' hooves around Ford Arroyo Ranch. Victor Pike arrived, bringing with him a fire of slaughter to burn all evidence and concoct a perfect play. The widow eloping with the savage Apache. But Pike didn't realize he was walking straight into a carefully planned trap. Sani wasn't a lone hero. With masterful skill, he created fake hoofprints pointing westward, successfully luring half of Pike's henchmen into chasing his own shadow. At the same time, in the thick darkness, Leah pressed little Beth down into the underground cellar. Then, hunched over, she crawled along the shallow ditch they had dug the day before, making her way through the shadows to the mouth of the Black Arroyo underground spring. Anger erupted when Pike realized the house was empty. He ordered a fire to be lit. The raging flames devoured the wooden roof, writhing and casting a blood-red light onto the pitch-black rock walls. Pike turned and chased after her towards the shallow alley, blocking Leah by the spring. He roughly searched her, frantically flipping through her coat to find the original map, but he only grasped air. That original life-or-death document was safely preserved in the stitching of a 6-year-old child's skirt, deep in the cellar. Driven mad by being outsmarted by a widow, Pike lost control. That stupid Caleb should have obediently sold the land before he slipped and fell into the abyss, he roared, inadvertently spitting out the dark truth. He didn't know that hidden behind a massive rock just 10 paces away, Sheriff Jonas Bell had heard every word. He had been secretly led there by Sani, using flashing lights on the hilltop. Realizing he had fallen into a trap, Pike frantically drew his gun, the steel barrel pointed directly at Sani, who had just emerged from the shadows. But Leah acted first. She used all her strength to rip open the rope stretched across the ditch. The small dam burst. A thick stream of mud accumulated from the spring gushed down, striking Pike's horse's leg. The beast, in a panic, reared violently, deflecting a fatal bullet that missed and lodged in the cliff face. Seizing the opportunity, Sani lunged forward, knocking the rancher to the ground, his cold hunting knife pressed against Pike's neck. But at that critical moment, Leah's mud-stained hand gripped the warrior's arm. "No!" she hissed, her chest heaving, her eyes fixed on her husband's killer. "He must live. Live long enough to say Caleb's name in court." As Pike's hands were bound and the sheriff emerged from the shadows, Leah slowly turned. In the vast ravine, her only refuge was now a blazing column of red fire. She had protected her child, preserved the water source and the truth, but the price was the entire past reduced to ashes. The pale dawn finally crept across the pitch-black cliffs of Black Arroyo, revealing a heartbreaking reality. The familiar wooden house was now just a dull, smoking stone foundation. Cuddled in her mother's lap, little Beth obediently clutched the black stone with silver veins and the juniper bear in her tiny arms, the last remaining fragments of a childhood that had just weathered a storm. Chief Jonas Bell extinguished his half-smoked cigarette. He confirmed that Pike's earlier deranged confession and the original diagram unearthed from Beth's skirt were more than enough to overturn Caleb's case and secure the widow's legal ownership of the water source. No one promised the road ahead would be easy, but for the first time on this barren land, the scales of justice had tipped in her favor. A few neighboring ranchers arrived, hesitantly scooping up water to extinguish the embers. Their eyes were fixed on the cool water gushing from the mouth of the ravine. They understood that the life of the entire valley had been saved, not by Pike's cold-blooded toll booth, but by a fair agreement at the high price the widow had just paid. In a deserted corner of the yard, Sani silently gathered her belongings, preparing to leave before the American marshal could return to search. Leah did not shed tears of pleading. She stepped over the ashes and handed him Caleb's handkerchief, its corner scorched. "If you silently turn your back and walk into the rocky gorge alone again," she said softly, but her gaze was fixed on the warrior, "it means you're once again making decisions for me." Sani's hand froze in midair. He looked down at the water winding through the stones, then up at little Beth, carefully placing the wooden bear on the steps of the dimly lit house. For the first time in his life, shrouded in darkness, the wanderer Mescalero didn't choose to leave to die in someone else's place, but chose to stay and live together, to face the coming storms together. "Mommy," Beth's clear voice broke the silence of the early morning. "Where's our house, Mommy?" Leah gazed at the charred stone, at the clear water irrigating the land, and at the man standing steadfastly beside her and her child. "Right here, my love," she whispered, a strong smile sprouting from the ashes. "We just have to rebuild it." The early morning wind swept through the Black Arroyo Gorge. Where the raging fire had consumed the house the night before, water now began to trickle through the newly dug trenches, silently, persistently, and resiliently, like a promise that would never fade. Thank you for accompanying Leah and Sani through the harshest storms of the West. Sometimes, losing everything is when we begin to build a true home from the ashes. If this story of healing, justice, and resilience touches your heart, please leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments section, and subscribe to the channel so we can continue to meet in more fiery videos.